This is your KickAss Life podcast, episode number 138.
This is the Your KickAss Life podcast with Andrea Owen, a no BS guide to self-help and badassery. Because ladies, let's face it, life's too short for it to not kick ass. And here's your host, the girl who serves it up straight with a side of crazy, Andrea Owen.
Hey there, ass kickers. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I hope you're having a great week. Spring is coming. I don't know if it's that way in your neck of the woods, but spring is definitely coming, which if you've been listening to my podcast for a few years, you know how excited I am to have spring here. I also wanted to tell you that tomorrow I am doing my very first Facebook Live on my Facebook page. If you've been in any of my classes or in my alumni group, you know that I go in there and do Facebook Lives, no problemo. However, I am going on my Facebook business page, fan page. What do we call those these days? I don't like calling my audience, my community, fans. Feel free to throw a drink in my face if I ever refer to you as fans. This is my community. We're each other's people. So over there on the Facebook page, on the Your KickAss Life Facebook page, I'm going to be doing my very first Facebook Live tomorrow, which is the 23rd of February. So if you're listening to this later, you can go back and watch it. And it's super easy. It's at facebook.com/Your KickAss Life. And if you like the page already, I'm pretty sure you'll get a notification that I have gone live. I'm excited about it. What I'm going to do is tomorrow's episode, is that what you call it, is going to just be an introduction. There's a lot of people on that page that I think have no idea who I am, no idea that there's an actual person there. You guys, that page has like 182,000 likes. It kind of ran away from me and I've been sort of avoiding it because I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. I'm such a good social media person, aren't I? I mostly hang out on Instagram. Instagram is really my jam. But what I'm going to start to do that I'm really excited about on these Facebook Live videos is I am going to get my handy dandy book that I wrote a couple years ago, 52 Ways to Live a Kick-Ass Life. And each week I'm going to go through a chapter. I'm not going to read it. That would be really boring, but you guys can do that yourselves. But I'm just going to talk about each chapter because it's been a few years since I've written it. Since I've written it, it's been about 4 years. Since it's come out, it's been about 3 years and I have different ideas. I have new ideas and new tools that I'm going to talk about each week on these Facebook Live videos. So I'm really excited. It would be awesome if you guys stopped by. I'm pretty sure it will be noon Eastern time on Thursday. So stop by and say hi. And before we get into the content, we still have some spots left for the Self-Love Revolution Master's Course Retreat here in North Carolina. So please, 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 if you are interested, sign up because tomorrow is the last day for the payment plan and the last day for early bird pricing. If you're kind of on the fence, get on the phone with me, girl. Like I've been telling you this forever. You may have missed it though. The info page is theselfloverevolution.com. And if you want to jump on the phone with me, I do have some availability tonight and tomorrow during the day a little bit. And let's try to figure it out. So hop on over there. There is a link to book a chat with either me or Amy Smith, who's my co-host on this retreat. Theselfloverevolution.com. There's a link to it in the show notes. Come and join us. I would love to have you. I would love to get to squeeze you in person. And that's it for the announcements. Let's jump into today's episode. All right. This episode is a little bit different than what you are probably used to. And the reason that I had to write this episode and come out on the podcast and talk to you about this is because your kick-ass life evolves because I evolve and change. And therefore, I've been thinking about how to go about this and how to talk to you about it for a while now. And I felt like there's no perfect time. There's no perfect way. And so I am simply pulling the trigger. And really where it starts is there's a conversation that's been happening in these parts of town, also known as my life coach friends, my life coach cronies, healers, those in the wellness industry who also happen to run online businesses. And the conversation is, should we bring politics into our businesses? Should we talk about this to our audiences? Show of hands. Who's excited about talking about this more? Who's excited about hearing about politics more? Probably not many of you. You come here to this here podcast for personal development. You come here to learn about how to be a better woman, learning new tools, and hopefully for my good humor and charm. Just kidding, kind of. Well, what I've always wanted, what your kick-ass life is a place where women can feel good about themselves, where they can build confidence and courage and be proud of who they are, proud of how they're showing up in the world, proud of what they've created in their lives, proud of the hard conversations they have with themselves and with others. And at the end of the day, me, Andrea Owen, creator and the woman that birthed your kick-ass life, has to be that woman too. I have to be proud of how I'm showing up in the world. I have to be proud of what I've created, proud of the conversations I have to have. And there has been no time in the last 10 years of this work that I do where I have been asked more to walk that talk than right now. What's been happening over the last 6 months or so with me is that I've been listening and watching and processing. And let me stop for a second and say that listening and watching and processing is absolutely my privilege showing. The fact that I have time to do so. And that is something I absolutely recognize and own, hence pulling the trigger on this conversation with y'all. So let me give you a little bit of backstory if you haven't already heard about this recently. So I was a proud Republican for a long time. I voted for George W. Bush in 2004. I voted for John McCain in 2008. And then in the spring of 2009, I was pregnant with my second child, my daughter, Sydney. I took a women's studies class called Men and Masculinity. I was finishing my bachelor's degree and it sounded interesting. It worked with my school schedule and I needed it for credits to finish my degree. Never in my life before had I been that interested in women's studies. It just wasn't anything that had crossed my radar as something I wanted to be interested in. But maybe the universe was conspiring to change my life. On the first day of that class, we were asked to introduce ourselves to the person next to us. The young woman next to me told me her name and told me she was a feminist. And I said, and I was trying to kind of be funny, I said, oh, well, then I can tell you already that you probably won't like me. And she said, why? And I said, because I don't consider myself a feminist and I'm also a Republican. And at that point in time, I was 33 years old and I honestly wouldn't have admitted it then, but I can admit to you now, I didn't know what feminism was. I didn't know what patriarchy was. I didn't know what privilege was. I thought people who had privilege were like the Paris Hiltons of the world. I didn't even know what misogyny was. And that was the first time in a class where I did a lot more listening than contributing to the conversation. In essence, everything changed for me that semester. One of the things that changed was I realized what I had been so angry about for so long, that the anger and sometimes rage that I had for not being taken seriously because of my gender, for being sexually harassed and assaulted, that there was a name for what I was really fucking pissed at. And that was sexism, misogyny, and patriarchy. So back to this conversation with all of you. If you follow me on my personal Facebook page, which I doubt many of you do, and you're more than welcome to, I'll post a link in the show notes, you'll see my public posts are vocal about politics and what I stand for and my opinions. And I've mostly kept them out of here, and I've mostly even kept them out of my Your Kick-Ass Life social media accounts. And this is something I've really, really been thinking about a lot. Why? Why have I not been more vocal? And the reason, I think, is my own shit. Because there is no guidebook for how to be a teacher of personal development / life coach with a podcast while the world as you know it catches on fire. And I panicked there for a minute. I kept looking around like, how do I do this? You guys, how do we do this? I don't know anyone who does exactly what I do and is talking about activism and doing it well. My colleagues are either not talking about it at all or throwing all of themselves in it. And that is starting to change. To give some of my colleagues some credit, it is starting to tilt and it's starting to change. And it's an awkward place for us to be. I want to do it right. I want to do it well for you and for the next generation. But what I realized is when there's a revolution, you just fucking do it. When you're fighting the resistance, you just jump. It's non-linear. It's messy. Sometimes I'll get it wrong and sometimes I'll get it right. I will clean up any messes I feel I have made along the way, and I will keep going. And that, to me, is in my experience and what I see and what I make up for myself and what I make up for your kick-ass life as leadership. Here's what I want you to know. I am not here to tell you to agree with me. I am not here to tell you what to believe about different world issues. I am not here to tell you that my opinion matters the most and that mine is right and everyone else's is wrong. That is completely up to you. What I'm here to do is to educate. And maybe if you're someone like how I was sitting in that class in 2009, someone who doesn't identify as a feminist or don't have any concerns for women's rights, someone who thinks we have nothing to worry about and real women's problems are in other countries, maybe like me, you can listen and learn. Maybe your mind won't be changed, but if nothing else, you'll learn. And to be perfectly honest, in future episodes that are about social justice and social change issues, I'm not trying to change the minds of people who are dead set with opinions opposite of mine. I know how that is, and I know that when you hear someone trying to tell you different ways and different perspectives, most of the time we get more dead set into our own opinion. And if those people do change their minds, great. But whom I'm speaking to are the women that so far don't know much, if anything, about those topics. Or maybe they've only listened to the ideas and opinions of their husbands or their parents and haven't looked at any other ideas and opinions and haven't really formed one for themselves yet. Or maybe they just haven't cared enough. Nothing quote unquote political has ever affected them in their lives. And I know this may be a lot of you listening, and this isn't at all to shame you or tell you that you're wrong for not caring so far in your life yet, or not knowing, or for taking on the opinions of other people that you care about. It's really, really common, and everyone has to start somewhere. I talk about and teach a lot of things on this podcast and on my blog, and all of it falls under the umbrella of you feeling empowered, of you empowering yourself. And one of those things is to stand up for what you believe in, to speak up for yourself and to speak up for what breaks your heart, because we all have those things. And I also want you to know that I strongly believe that with privilege comes responsibility. A responsibility to the people who don't have it. A responsibility to the people whose voices aren't as loud as mine, who don't walk this earth as comfortably and as easily as I do. This is not comfortable. This whole situation that I am facing right now with having an audience and having a platform to speak on is not comfortable. This is awkward. For some of you, you might be feeling guilty. And if so, great. I, for one, have been racked with guilt. And when that is happening in my life, that tells me something isn't right. Guilt can be good in that it's information telling us something we're doing or have done might not be in alignment with who we really are. So what does all this mean for the podcast? Well, here's where all the reading, thinking, and processing over the last few months has made me realize. Among other things that I've mentioned, I help women rise up from the wounds that trigger them. That's where help with negative self-talk comes in, feeling good enough, recovering from perfectionism, hiding and numbing out. And what I realized pretty early on in my practice is that the root of the problem is more often than not cultural and familial problems and injustices. More specifically, the root of the problem is what's being passed down from generation to generation, and what's being passed around in our cultures is accepting these types of notions like girls are meant to be seen and not heard. Your body should be thin, and anything less than that is bad and ugly. To be perfect is the ultimate goal, that mistakes are unacceptable. No one wants to hear about your problems. And along the way, and in this podcast, you may have heard me repeat the phrase, you don't have to inherit dysfunction. And I believe that wholeheartedly. But what I've come to realize is that I can talk about healing our individual quote unquote dysfunction all day. But if I'm not also addressing and trying to dismantle the root cause of it, the systematic way women have been oppressed for many, many years, I'm taking the fucking long way. And you know, I don't have time for the bullshit long way, nor do you. So is this podcast shifting to talk more about politics? No, it's not. But it will be shifting to talk about more social justice issues and women's issues. And not just talk. You won't hear me just complaining and shaking my fist at the patriarchy. You see enough of that on Facebook. It will be about awareness. It will be about action. And it will be about solution. Because I want to make this world a better place than it was when it welcomed me in it. And I hope you'll join me on my quest. So that's all I have for you. Thanks for being here, and thanks for listening to me. And until next time, Ass Kickers, I will see you out in cyberspace. Bye-bye.